The Minions invaded popular culture whenever Despicable Me came out in 2010. They were initially only a minor part of the overall plot, however, due to the audience reception, the masterminds at Illumination understood the marketing prowess behind the Minion IP. And while Despicable Me continued to iterate in the future, the Minions split off into their own sub-franchise, their movie being promptly titled The Minions. There was a Minions movie released in 2015 that was not good, and from my understanding, the entire appeal behind the Minions is that they don't speak English, meaning that they appeal to everyone because they don't have a language barrier, and they have a generic enough design that my grandfather with cataracts can make out. They are an icon of the 21st century in all the worst ways possible, because despite appealing to primarily children, they were adopted by boomers and Facebook and used to create the most abhorrent images known to man. And then they were adopted by Generation Z in and around 2017 and turned into this post-ironic boomer icon who existed in spite of the boomer iteration. This just being the Minion character. I haven't even talked about the 2015 Minion movie yet. The 2015 Minion movie was bad because they expected the idea of a Minion to be able to carry a theatrical film. I watched it when I was 11, and I didn't like it. And I remember exactly why. They had to create personas of some of the Minions to give the movie an actual reason to exist. And they want you to think it's funny, because the Minions who are the protagonists aren't unique in terms of design. They just have names and you'd know their names, so you could forget Stuart, Kevin, and Bob. Little tangent. I remember when I was a child, I found the name Bob to be really funny. I don't know why. And I presume it was a Generation Z-wide phenomenon, because my friends found the name Bob to be funny too. And if we extrapolate my experience with the name Bob and apply it to every kid at that time, I'm guessing that it seeped into the Minions writing crew where they thought it would be a good idea to name Minions generic white man names. And I knew for a fact that these movies were meticulously crafted to appeal to me. I was the target demographic, and even then I was still kind of old. Like, the Minions has such unabashedly lowbrow humor that relies on the idiocy of the children watching it, and the desperation that parents have to entertain their children. And then, because the parents put their children in front of the Minions, they get exposed to their poison, and fall limp to the Facebook memes and whatnot. And then us, Generation Z. A majority of you who watch me are within my age range, meaning you can vaguely relate to me. And we know that movies have been delayed and shifted over these past 2 years, and you know why. This accumulating to July 1st, 2022. Minions Rise of Gru is a movie that is a sequel to a prequel. Okay, basically Minions 1 aimed to make this grandiose explanation of the Minions lore, and I remember a lot of it vividly, and I don't know why. At the end of Minions 1, we met a young Gru. There's continuity errors everywhere in this franchise, as the writers don't have any respect for the altruistic Minion fans like myself. I'll run through the continuity problems real quick. The Minions were said to be created by Gru in Despicable Me 1 in a bonus DVD feature. They were genetically engineered.
They're sort of these subterranean, genetically engineered creatures.
And then that was retconned in 2015 with Minions 1. And then people began to speculate whether or not the Minions 1 movie was propaganda made by Gru to stop the Minions from questioning their existence. I will leave that to film theory. But the Minions movie takes place throughout history and ends up in 1968, which is indicated by the fashion and the Queen's age. We meet a young Gru at the end of this movie who has technology that would indicate he's been involved in villainy for a while. And it's established in Minions 1 that the Minions follow the greatest villain. But Gru stops being a villain at the end of Despicable Me 1, and the Minions stay with him. So we've established that Gru has tech in Minions 1 that makes him a threat. Then, Minions 2. Minions 2 is set in 1976, where Gru looks the exact same as he did in Minions 1, despite it being 12 years later. Spoilers for Minions 2, by the way. Minions 2 is where Gru meets Nefario, who gives him his first weapon and car thing. And at that point, the Minions are already following him. Yet, in Minions 2, his villainy journey begins with Nefario working with him. Yet, in 1968, he looked the exact same and already had weapons. Do they intentionally make these movies have terrible continuity or what? Because I can guarantee you, I have went more in depth in the Minions timeline than a majority of people. So I've established that the Despicable Me franchise is incredibly inconsistent and has no respect for the audience. As I've labeled several inconsistencies, the franchise is a giant joke. I won't even lie. Speaking of joke, ever since cinemas were revived with Spider-Man in 2021, we've had several major films come out. Major as in, they're average films that have been elevated to divinity due to social media. Morbius, Sonic 2, kind of. I was committed. And now Minions Rise of Gru. Each of these movies got magnified significantly due to memes about them sweeping the box office, and in the case of Morbius, we the people gaslit Hollywood into putting this movie into theaters twice, and it flopped both times. And then for Sonic 2, it was unironically above average, and wasn't bad at all. Everything it wasn't supposed to be, although it sweeping the box office wasn't as viral as Morbius. You had everyone going crazy. And then now social media blew up again because of the Minions' Rise of Gru. And the entire thing is out of spite of Morbius, which I find so funny. And the prevailing mentality of the trend is to show up to it wearing a suit and video yourself. Listen, I've done that before and I'm not doing it again anytime soon. Confession time.
Guys, be quiet, let him talk.
I wasn't initially going to watch the Minions Rise of Gru. I thought the TikTok trend was dumb and not original, but there was something that compelled me to watch the movie. The soundtrack. The soundtrack of Illumination movies always go hard, which annoys me because I know for a fact it's just another avenue of marketing. Look here, Tame Impala? Brockhampton? Caliuchis? Phoebe Bridgers? What the heck? Yeah, and that's not the only Illumination soundtrack I heavily vibe to, by the way. Needless to say, I fell for the marketing trap, and I was sucked into giving my money to Illumination at the ripe age of 18. A few years above the targeted demographic, it was an eye-opening experience to walk in and watch a movie I know wasn't intended for me at all. Yet collectively, we've all gaslit each other into wanting to go watch this movie. And I left the theater, not remembering much, because the movie wasn't good. I know, sorry. I didn't like the Minions Rise of Gru, but I can't argue, it was a highlight of my week. Everyone clapped, and at the end, a standing ovation was given. Actually, I'm pretty sure we clapped whenever the film started, at the initial credits and after the end credits. We clapped a lot, okay? I felt so out of my element, and I'm sure the people that unironically went to go watch it, the parents, I'm sure they were equally as confused. Yeah, basically whenever I was watching it, there was a family of two or three rows in front of me, and their kid wasn't watching the movie at all. She was turned around to those behind her the entire time. The kid being like 3, and I feel like that accurately represents the Minions Rise of Gru. How are you going to make a movie that is based in the 70s when the target audience can't comprehend time properly? And then on top of that, the parents can't even relate to it either because they were probably born in the 80s or 90s. Who is the target audience here? Ironically, it feels like the movie was made for boomers because they would have been at the young adult age in the 70s and they'd be able to understand the references. Oh, what a unique shift. The Minions Rise of Gru has a really stupid plot that is random and low-key incoherent. It starts off with these group of villains called the Vicious Six, whose aim is to steal a Chinese zodiac amulet. The head honcho of the group, called Wild Knuckle, succeeds before being kicked out of the group. We don't really know why he was kicked out. I'm guessing it's because he was old. The scene was very reminiscent of Green Goblin. This character, Wild Knuckle, has a significant role in the movie and I thought I should mention it now, but I'm very conflicted by the voice actor, Alan Arkin. I am not a good example of a voice actor by any means, but I just find some of the lines to be so strangely delivered. I found that it didn't exactly match the design of the character. Then to make it more interesting, on top of that, there are parts of the film where Wild Knuckles looks like a person from the UK, and the context around him is very bad. And then that coupled with Wild Knuckles spending a large chunk of the film with a child he kidnapped. It could be a coincidence, but I found it to be gross. Like, you think they'll do everything in their power to avoid that comparison, right? Anyway, I found the Vicious Six to have cool character design, although after the movie finished, I realised that they were not that prominent for a majority of the movie. Then I realised the writers must have known that the Minions one was a critical flop, and they had to have an actual motivated narrative in the sequel to get any accolades. So they had the story around Gru that they were aware they couldn't logically do, but they knew the target audience of the movie would have been born after the first movie, so it wouldn't have mattered. The story is split up into 3 different plots. Initially, Gru and the Minions are together, but due to unforeseen circumstances, Gru gets kidnapped, leading to the Minions to band together to retrieve Gru. Although strangely, I think only 3 go after Gru, the 3 from the first movie. And there's a new 4th minion called Otto, who's got his own minor story. Isn't that crazy? Here's the fun part. They introduced a new character into a prequel. So you'd presume that something happened to him to where he isn't in the movie set in the modern day. I did joke about him getting killed off, but logic would deduct that he left, and they wouldn't kill off a character in an Illumination movie. Do you honestly think the writers are willing to add any emotional stakes to their movies? No, but I'll come back to that. The 3 minions we know all too well embark on a journey to retrieve Gru, and end up learning martial arts from a character voiced by Michelle Yeoh. Yeah, from that movie. A large portion of the movie is taken up by a martial arts segment, which plays a large role in the climax, but the entire time it's made out to be comic relief. Like, the minions learn nothing, and then it randomly pays off. I believe the Minions Rise of Gru is just a bunch of scenes written to be funny, and then the writers are like, oh no, we gotta connect them to a larger plot, to be a movie. and I left being really ashamed because nothing felt earned and there were zero stakes. I know there are usually zero stakes in a kids movie, but the vicious 5 use a zodiac amulet to turn the animals from the calendar, and they fight the 3 minions and Wild Knuckle, who is surprisingly mobile. The minions get turned into goofy, weak animals that aren't intimidating, yet they beat up the vicious 5 due to their training. Yeah, and then there's one scene that had them activating their inner beast. And then from that point on, you had random action that would be funny because it's random. I laughed at the climax more than once, and I'm ashamed of it. There was one scene that I really liked, that being Wild Knuckles going through a character arc that I actually enjoyed. He low-key took Gru under his wing for a duration of the movie and built up a rapport with him, which compelled Wild Knuckles to fight to save Gru in the climax. And Wild Knuckles went through it earlier in the movie. Homeboy was lonely and depressed. It was also cool to see Gru have this lighthearted innocence to him, which kind of preluded his soft side. Plus him being taken under Wild Knuckles' wing isn't that far off of Gru adopting kids himself. Anyway, Wild Knuckles gets hit point blank with fire breath from the main Vicious 6 member, Bell Bottom. Yeah, the entire group is forgettable. They don't really do that much outside of the climax, but I do like their designs. And it's crazy because my jaw dropped because I thought that Wild Knuckles was going to be killed off, which would then give an incentive to Gru to become an incredible villain because he had a motivation. He had a character arc motivation. And I thought Wild Knuckles was going to die. And then the screen faded to white. And then back to a funeral scene, and I was so happy because the movie actually took a risk. But no! He didn't die! He just hid behind a tree watching Gru. Even though when he was getting into the ambulance, he was told he would be locked up for life if he did recover. It was at this point that I realized the writers were never going to take a risk with the writing, despite there being no consequence for doing so. It was a prequel, and these characters don't exist in the modern day. Therefore, these characters don't matter. Like one of the minions give birth to a baby chicken minion, and yup, it's just there now. And then the character Otto doesn't exist in the modern day, and I thought they would have shipped them off, but no. Everyone leaves together. These new characters don't exist in the modern day. What happened to them to where they're not in the present? We know that Wild Knuckles probably died from old age, because look at him, he looks like he'd shoot a bow. And Otto probably went off to another country to do something else. But why do you have to make up my own headcanon for what happened, when they could have easily done their own thing? Especially for Wild Knuckles. And then what's even more fun is that the minions were established in the first movie to follow the best villain. If Gru looks up to and aspires to be a part of the Vicious 6, who have done more evil things than Gru, then why are the minions with Gru and not the Vicious 6? In this movie, oh my gosh. There was another part of the movie I enjoyed, Nefario. He is a benevolent gentleman. It's actually really cute at the end seeing him and Gru team up. It wasn't until writing the script of the video that I noticed every possible inconsistency imaginable. But do I regret watching Minions Rise of Gru? Believe it or not, not really, no. It was a good cinema experience, and I got to hyperfixate on the Minion lore for a week. And for that I'm grateful. Thank you for watching this video. Watch another one right here. Thank you to Patreon for making this video possible, and bye.